Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. Blockbuster day in our nation's judicial history. So much to discuss. I, like many of you, have been watching the testimony of Dr. Ford all day. It's by far the biggest story of the day. We're doing a live show here. Sportsbook Review usually puts on this show. It's a gambling weekend. You can get a lot of my gambling picks on Lock It In. I obviously love gambling. If you're new to the show, that's where I go to talk all day about gambling. I'll be on Lock It In later today. I do a show in the morning called Outkick the Coverage, sports talk radio show. I am a lawyer. I love politics. I love media. I love business. I talk about a little bit of everything on this show, which is called Outkick the Show, where I can come on and give you my opinion about anything under the sun, whether it's Game of Thrones, whether it's the Republican and Democratic presidential debates, or whether it is a historic, unbelievable moment of political theater that we are in the midst of right now. Dr. Ford, Christine Blasey Ford, I believe is her full name, testifying in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So many different things that I want to get to. Obviously, many of you have reactions. I can't even keep track of all of the reactions. I'm not going to read any of the comments. So whatever you are saying in the comments will have no impact unless I specifically say, hey, I'm going to Facebook Live or I'm going to the comments. Someone I did just see out of the corner of my eye described me as a best-selling author. That is also true. And here, for the record, is my book, which is a best-selling book this week and should be, if the list is accurate, on the New York Times bestseller list. Republicans Buy Sneakers Too is my book that is out in stores and you can buy anywhere. All right, let's dive right into this. I think there are so many interesting angles to hit here, and I am going to hit all of them with you. First of all, I think this is important. Dr. Ford did a great job of testifying. But as someone who has lived in the criminal justice system, just because you're a good witness doesn't mean that you are telling the truth. And I think of a structural level here. I think Republicans gambled that conducting an actual investigation here and having effectively a cross-examination or deposition going on was going to work well. It did not work well because it had to happen in 5-minute segments. And as soon as this thing started, I'll be honest with you, I haven't watched a lot of Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. As soon as this thing started and I saw that they were going to cross-examine her in 5-minute increments and then were immediately going to go to the Democratic side and allow them 5 minutes to also ask or make all of their statements, I said, my God, this is going to be a mess. Here is where I think the Republicans got things wrong. If I had been conducting this examination, first of all, I think this is an ultimate DBAP moment for Republican senators. You have to yourself, I believe, and deal with the fact that some people say, oh, of course that guy doesn't believe this woman. I don't think you need to say that you're in the business of determining whether or not you believe her. I think the question is, do you believe her or do you believe the 4 witnesses who have told different stories than her? Because if it's 1 against 1, it's hard to decide what we actually know. If it is 4 witnesses against 1 witness, then I think this is a big deal, and it's much easier to argue. I thought that it was a really misguided move to focus on how she got an attorney. How did the polygraph take place? The idea that she is a Democratic operative is, to me, much less interesting than whether or not her story is true. I believe, having watched that entire testimony, that she believes her story. There are all sorts of things that we believe on a regular basis that actually are not true, okay? We have this idea that's ingrained, I think because of Law and Order, I think because of television. Lawyers know that among the least reliable of witnesses are eyewitnesses. There are tons of people who have been freed off of death row because they have been convicted on eyewitness testimony, because most people believe that the most reliable evidence there can be is eyewitness testimony until you realize there are multiple eyewitnesses, and oftentimes you get stories that are not true. Not because people are trying to intentionally lie necessarily, but because we all see things differently even when they occur directly in front of us. So, we have this illusion that eyewitness testimony is incredibly reliable, when in essence it often isn't, which is why corroborating evidence or circumstantial evidence frequently becomes so integral. Here is what we know about Dr. Ford. She doesn't know the date. She doesn't know the location. She doesn't even know the year. She doesn't know how she got to or from this party. And we know that there are 4 witnesses on the record, including her best friend in high school, who have all failed to confirm or corroborate any of the details she has given, including both men that she placed in that room. We also know that she did not say anything publicly about this until Brett Kavanaugh became on the line, potentially, to be appointed as a Supreme Court justice. So she didn't have an issue with him sitting on the D.C. Circuit. She didn't even have an issue with him having lifetime tenure on the District of Columbia Circuit there, meaning he's one of the 20-ish most important judges in America already. There's a lot of focus on whether or not this guy deserves a lifetime appointment. Newsflash, he already has one. I haven't heard anybody argue we need to take this guy out of office as it currently exists, right? It doesn't make sense to me. You're fine with him being one of the 20 most important judges in America. You're not fine with him being one of the 9 most important judges in America. That doesn't make sense to me, okay? Just from a most procedural background. I think the Democrats did a much better job of supporting her as a truth teller than the Republicans did of pointing out the flaws in her story. To me, as a lawyer, as someone who talks to people for a living, story matters. And being able to pinpoint, if I had been doing that cross-examination, I wouldn't have treated her any differently than I would have anyone else. I fundamentally reject the idea that people who allege that they're victims of sexual assault should be treated any differently than anyone else in a courtroom-like proceeding. I don't buy into that idea. I don't buy into it at all. I think treating someone differently based on their race or gender is wrong. I have sympathy and empathy for any victim of crime, but every single victim of crime is cross-examined to make sure that their story is true. Otherwise, you are incentivizing and requiring that you believe someone based entirely on their race or gender, which is, wait for it, sexist and racist. So there are many reasons that you can oppose Brett Kavanaugh as a Supreme Court justice. I think the Republicans did a poor job of allowing this woman, Miss Mitchell, to actually ask their questions. And I also think not setting this up where they got straight through all of the questions that she was going to ask and then let the Democrats all go was a mistake. I don't know general and Senate judiciary terms how the chairman decides the way that the structure of the testimony is going to be taken. But I think that was a mistake by Charles Grassley, the senator in charge of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm telling you right now, if I were making that decision, I would have said, okay, the Democrats get to go for their whole time, and then the Republicans get to go for their whole time. So I think the Republicans miscalculated in the political theater of what this was going to look like. And I'm surprised because there's a lot of lawyers on this committee, obviously, on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm surprised that people didn't say, wait a minute, it's hard to conduct a deposition in 5-minute increments, particularly when so much of that focus was on details that don't seem to matter that much to me in the grand scheme of things. So if they had said, Clay Travis, how should we conduct this? I would have said, Senator Grassley, first of all, you guys have to ask questions yourself. Secondly, focus on all of the evidence that is against her during your questioning. I want to know, what do you think about the fact that your best friend says that she has no recollection of this happening? Don't you think it's a bit strange that you can claim to remember everything from inside the house so well, but that you don't remember how you got 7 miles back home that night or how you got to the party? Don't you think it's a bit strange that everybody else who was at this party doesn't have any recollection of it ever happening, including your best friend? Why would their recollections be different than yours? This is not a she said, he said. This is a he said, he said, he said, she said versus a she said. If you have 5 people with recollections and 4 of them have one recollection and the other one has a different recollection, which one in general is likely to be telling the truth overall? Again, I don't think she's intentionally lying. I think she may be mistaken. I think she may be misidentified who the individuals are in this case. I think she believes what she is saying, but there are all sorts of examples of great, tremendous people who get up on the witness stand and are proven to have been wrong. Not because they're intentionally lying, not because their motive is something nefarious, but just because when you're on a witness stand and you are an eyewitness for something that happened 36 years ago, I think it's crazy. Let me give you an example. When I was in high school, and I'm 39 now, a little bit younger, the most traumatic thing that happened to me in high school was one night, me and a bunch of buddies went over to where the girls in our high school, the cheerleaders in our high school, were having a sleepover. And we decided we were going to roll toilet paper, whatever you were going to call it, that house. All the girls are inside of the house, and we're teenage boys, and we think we're going to throw all the toilet paper in the trees outside their house. Well, it turns out they weren't there yet, back home from somewhere. It was night, and we're throwing toilet paper all in the trees. Suddenly, across the street, we hear a shotgun blast go off. Someone has fired a shotgun into a rifle into the air. And all of us panic. It's like 8 or 9 boys, 2 different cars. We're like, holy crap, somebody's shooting at us. All right, this is Nashville, Tennessee, Antioch to be specifically, my senior year of high school. And everybody panics. There are, I think, 8 of us. 5 people run towards the car in the front. 3 of us run towards the car in the back. My buddy, Ian Scott, best man at my wedding. Me, Ian Scott, Paul Kim. All dive into the back of the car. It's a Saab red, cruddy old car, right? Everybody dives into the car. I'm in the back laying down. My buddy Paul is in the back with me. Ian is driving. It's a dead-end street. We have to turn around and we have to drive back by the guy with the rifle. As we pass him, he takes aim at the car, aims for the front wheel, misses, the car gets hit, and immediately skids. Then as we drive past him, he gets down on one knee, I'm told later by Ian who is driving, and shoots in, aiming for the back window to try to kill us, misses the back window by a couple of inches, and that slug is embedded in the Saab. Okay? We then drive on and we stop at a gas station. That's a traumatic experience. A fucking redneck in Antioch, Tennessee tried to kill us because we were rolling the cheerleader's house. Okay? That all 100% happened. Every single person who was in my class that year and was at that event would tell you about it. Moreover, every single person in the high school knew all about it because we were involved, and yours truly has a huge mouth. When a traumatic incident happened to me in high school, my first thought was to tell everybody about it. And if people didn't believe us, we would take them outside to the back of the car and we would point to the bullet holes in the car that came from that crazy dude across the street who shot at us. Okay? That's my recollection of that evening. If I testified to it, there would be a lot of other people from my high school that would say, oh yeah, I remember that happening. There would be a lot of parents involved. There would be a lot of evidence to support what I am saying. If I told you that story, and I filled out that entire story, and then everybody else who I just named came up and they said, I don't have any recollection of that happening or that evening at all, would any of you believe me? I can 100% believe it. But if everybody else is not able to give corroborating evidence just because I'm a compelling witness and a likable guy, doesn't mean that I'm telling the truth. I think that the Republicans, if they had been smart, would have first done it in this order. They would have put on all 3 of the witnesses immediately after this testimony from Dr. Ford. They would have put on Mark Judge, they would have put on Patrick Smith, and they would have put on Leland Kaiser, and they would have questioned them and found out that all 3 of the other people named in her report all deny any knowledge of this at all. Then they would go to Kavanaugh, and they would say, okay, we got one story from Christine Ford, and now we've got 3 different stories from Mark Judge, Patrick Smith, and Leland Kaiser, and on top of that, we're now going to hear from Brett Kavanaugh. So then it's a she said on this hand. We got a she said. And then we have a he said, a he said, a he said, and a she said, all disagreeing. That's kind of easy to follow, right? There are 4 people who are telling one story, and there is one person who is telling a different story. All of those are witnesses directly involved in this case. Now, here's the other thing. There's so much political grandstanding going on here. Here is the Democrats don't want an FBI investigation. Because I have done investigations before. Most investigations don't reach a conclusion. They determine what the facts are in issue, and then they present them to the Senate Judiciary Committee to try to figure out what to do with those facts. That's exactly what's going on here right now. The reason why the Democrats want an FBI investigation is they want to prolong this process so that it takes longer than the midterms, so that they can throw a Hail Mary and hope to get a Senate filled with Democratic majority so they can keep everyone from being able to get a Supreme Court justice confirmed from Donald Trump and the Republican side. That's what this is really about. I'm a cut to the chase guy. The reason why Democrats are claiming they want an FBI investigation is not because there's actually any details in question here. She's told her story. He's told his story. Everybody else has filed an affidavit saying what their recollection of this incident is, none of which support her. And they are hoping, the Democrats are, that they can answer the Hail Mary from Republicans. The decision by Mitch McConnell not to confirm or even have a hearing for Merrick Garland was about a Hail Mary from the Republicans of, we will let the voters decide. And then Donald Trump pulled a rabbit out of his hat, and as a result, he's the president of the United States. The Democrats thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and she'd be able to put forward her own nominee. Mitch McConnell was sitting. The dealer had double face card. Was showing. Mitch McConnell got an unbelievable draw. Right. Mitch McConnell put all his cards onto the center of the table, and he happened to get a royal flush from the draw. Right. It got incredibly lucky. Now Democrats are trying to get their own incredible draw in a poker match that they're losing. And the best way and the only way they can get that is if they get a Senate majority. They are not going to allow, the Democrats will not allow, that is, the Republicans to get a Supreme Court justice passed. So what they are hoping for is if they can prolong this until the November midterm elections, they will be able to get a Senate majority and keep it from happening. That's what all this is about. Cut through all the crap, cut through all the grandstanding, cut through all the pablum, all the pointed, awful rhetoric. That's what's really at stake here. And the truth of the matter is this. Right now, the Republicans are very likely to retain the Senate. What's also likely is that the Republicans are not only likely to retain the Senate, they're also likely to increase their majorities in the Senate. I think this actually backfires if Kavanaugh gets pulled for Democrats. And let me explain why. Because there are many states where immediately the Senate race will change overnight if people are voting based on who the next Supreme Court justice is going to be. Because right now, I'll give you an example. I'm in the state of Tennessee. Phil Bredesen is running a close campaign against Marsha Blackburn. The worst thing that can happen for Phil Bredesen is Kavanaugh's nomination gets pulled and his election becomes a referendum on who should decide the Supreme Court. Because then all the Republicans are going to show up and Phil Bredesen's going to lose. And the same thing is going to happen in Indiana. And the same thing is going to happen in Missouri. This is really bad situation in general for Democrats if his nomination gets pulled or if he gets voted down. Because then the entire Senate midterm shift from being a referendum on Donald Trump to being a referendum on who the next Supreme Court justice will be. And many Republicans voted for Donald Trump, not because of Donald Trump, but because they wanted him to have the right to pick the next Supreme Court justice. So, if you think about this, Indiana, Tennessee, Missouri, North Dakota, West Virginia, I think all 5 of those states flip, maybe Montana. All of the states where we have really competitive races right now, in states that Donald Trump already won, are going to become referendums on who sits on the Supreme Court. And there is a lot more Republican voters in those states, Florida as well, than there are Democratic voters. So as a result, I believe the Democrats are actually playing a bad hand here. Because I think the outcome will be the majority will end up being even more substantial for the Republicans. And here's the real kicker. Donald Trump, if he pulls Kavanaugh, would then have the opportunity to put forward a new nominee. And the Trump card, pardon the pun here, of what's going on here would be that Donald Trump could come home with an even more conservative justice than Brett Kavanaugh. In fact, I think he would pick Amy Coney Barrett, who is a woman. And then you allow Trump to flip identity politics on its head. He can come out with her and make the statement, you know what? I listened to the country. I think we need more women in positions of prominence on the American judicial system, which is why I have chosen Amy Coney Barrett. In fact, if this were a House of Cards episode, do you know who would have leaked this information about Brett Kavanaugh? Frank Underwood. So when Kavanaugh got shot down, he could actually come in with the grandmaster chess move and put in the person that he actually wanted in the first place. I'm telling you right now, the Democrats are fighting a stalling action that requires a Hail Mary to be completed because it's unlikely, given the field right now, that the Democrats are going to be able to pick up any seats. Doesn't mean I don't think that the Republicans fundamentally misplayed this hearing. Doesn't mean that I don't think they should have called in me and been like, okay, Clay Travis, how should we handle this? I think I would have done a much better job than the cross-examiner they had. And also, I think I would have done a much better job than most of the senators. All right, several other thoughts. Here's what has to happen if the Republicans actually want to nominate Kavanaugh. They have to focus on the 1982 incident. I'm sorry, who her attorney is, why she picked that attorney, anything relating with any event other than 1982, to me is wasted momentum. The only thing that matters about this woman's testimony, it's not about whether she wants to fly on an airplane. It's not about why her motives are to come forward, although I do believe that she would have never come forward if Kavanaugh had turned into a liberal Democrat and was being nominated for the Supreme Court. I think that her politics is certainly a factor in her decision to come forward. But none of that matters. The motivation of her does not matter. What matters is that 1982 incident, or whatever year it was. Remember, she doesn't know the year. She doesn't know the house. She doesn't know the location. She doesn't know how she got to or from there, but she knows everything that happened inside that house. And also, she doesn't have any support. Mark Judge, Patrick Smith, Leland Kaiser, and Brett Kavanaugh all say that her story is not true, and they have not been able to in any way support it. That is factual evidence that matters here. So all of that should be the focus of the Republicans, not anything else. Here's another story that I think is amazing. This is Jedi mind trick level movement by Democrats. This woman requested that she stay anonymous. As it becomes clear that Brett Kavanaugh is going to be confirmed, suddenly her story leaks and her name gets out there, and everybody puts pressure on her to go public. The only people who knew were Democrats. So the Democrats leaked her story to the Washington Post to make her go public, and then their entire Senate Judiciary Committee hearing was about apologizing to her because of what she had to go through. This is next level Jedi mind trick level stuff, and the media doesn't even call them on it. The media doesn't even say, wait a minute, you can't sit around and say how much respect you have for a sexual assault victim and then simultaneously be the reason that she had to go public. This was an example of partisan politics. The Democrats were desperate, and so they tossed her name out to the media. They gave a woman they had promised an anonymity to, they gave up her name to go after Brett Kavanaugh. Here is another thing that I think is important. In our society right now, we have lost the ability to distinguish between uncouth behavior and criminal behavior. Brett Kavanaugh denies it. There are multiple witnesses saying it never happened. But this, as it existed in 1982, I don't believe was a crime. Was it an inappropriate behavior if it happened, as she alleges? Yes. Would a 17-year-old boy have been charged with a felony for this? No way. No way. And if he had been, he was a juvenile, meaning that record would have been sealed and destroyed as soon as he became 18 years old. I think this is an important element here. If we believe as a society that juvenile records should be destroyed when people turn 18, so stupid young adult behavior does not follow you around for the rest of your life, and I'm consistent on this when people go back into old tweets and everything else, why would we not believe that a juvenile action that is alleged and there is no corroborating evidence actually happened should not keep someone from getting a job when he or she is 53 years old. That's the entire purpose of having a juvenile justice system, is the idea that we don't know what kids are going to become when they become adults, and instead that we should not end up with a situation where everyone in America is judged by the stupid decisions they made when they were 15, 16, and 17 years old. We don't believe that you should, barring a tremendous criminal negativity, an act that is so criminal in nature that you deserve to be tried as an adult, that it shouldn't actually follow you for the rest of your life. All right, any additional notes that I had right here? I think that's pretty much it. I would say this is my breakdown of Dr. Ford's testimony. Now, I haven't really read any of your questions. Intelligent questions only. Intelligent questions only about what you have seen already. Any intelligent questions about what you have seen already. Water is in the cup. I'm not hitting alcohol early. I got a television show to do later. Will I do this after Kavanaugh? That is my plan. Yes, my plan is to do this after Kavanaugh, but I got a television show to do this afternoon, so I don't have that. My advice if I were advising Brett Kavanaugh right now, I tweeted this. You need to look like a human, not like a lawyer or a judge. That sounds easy. People like humans. They don't like lawyers or judges. If I were advising Brett Kavanaugh, I would come out guns blazing about how you didn't do this, about how awful you feel that we have entered into a universe where one person's accusation can torpedo someone getting a job, especially when it's not corroborated by any extra evidence, that you have had to sit down with your two daughters and have a conversation with them about how nasty and brutish our modern day politics has become, that even when your dad has tried to do everything right in his life, sometimes people are going to attack him because of what he believes. I also think you need to talk about your relationship with your wife. I think you need to talk about how difficult it's been for you to have to answer accusations that are not true, that she knows is not true, to have your name dragged through the mud, as has happened. I think you need to say that you're not saying that nobody attacked Dr. Ford. You don't know what her motivations are. You don't know what happened that night in question. You're not even questioning whether it happened because you simply don't know enough. The only thing you can say is that it was not me, as all of the evidence has reflected. And I think you need to say that in a human manner, not like a robot and not like a lawyer or a judge answering questions in a courtroom thinking that this is some sort of argument about legal jurisprudence. You are in the midst of political theater. You are putting on makeup to sit at a table. You have to put on a show that convinces the American public that what has been alleged against you is not true. You're not a professional actor, but you got to act like crazy. When I am on television, that is not 100% the accurate personification of what I am. It is a reflection of that. When you put on makeup to do your job, you are taking yourself fundamentally out of reality and putting on a show. Politicians right now are using you to stage political theater. They know millions of people are watching. They're worried about their 2020 presidential campaigns. They're worried about their re-elections. This is not a legal proceeding where you are standing in front of the Supreme Court making an argument. In fact, this is one of the very reasons the Supreme Court does not want cameras in the courtroom, because they want to make it about the law, not about the performance. This is a trial. You learn in law school, trial courts are about putting on shows, putting on performances, being a great master of the attention of the jury. As you move up beyond trial court and you're not performing for a jury anymore, it's about the law, the arguments for the law. Judges typically focus not on the performance, they focus on the legal argument. Kavanaugh has to be told, and he has to understand, this is not about the law. This is about performance art. This is political theater. If you want to be a Supreme Court justice, you have to go out there and put on the performance of your life, selling a verified, authentic version of yourself which emotes much more than you do normally. Dr. Ford told a very good story. She was a very compelling witness. The Republicans, I think, did a poor job rebutting her allegations. The Democrats did a great job buttressing her arguments. Now is the opportunity for Brett Kavanaugh to go out and sell his side of the story. If he doesn't do a good job of selling it, then he may never get to sit on the Supreme Court. But he'll still probably get to sit on the D.C. Circuit. He will join Robert Bork as a footnote in history. But there is a precedence out there right now. Will Brett Kavanaugh put on the performance of his life right now and vindicate himself and his family and his good name? We're about to find out. I'll be watching, and I bet y'all will as well. Love all of you. Appreciate all the time. I'll be back after Kavanaugh again. My name is Clay Travis. I got a book. It's called Republicans Buy Sneakers Too. I bet that 30 minutes I just did breaking down the testimony is better than anything you'll see on Fox News. I bet it's better than anything you'll see on MSNBC. Bet it's better than anything you'll see on CNN. That's what I do. I'm really good at this. My name's Clay Travis. This has been Outkick, the show.